Hello, I'm Duncan Hart, and I'm the Learning and Youth Engagement Manager at Glasgow Film. You're about to watch a BFI Film Academy Labs session on film festivals, why you should go, and how to get the most out of them. BFI Film Academy Labs are all about helping 16 to 25-year-olds break into the screen industries. These monthly practical sessions are led by industry professionals and focus on the specifics of working in film and television and developing your skills to be the best screen creative you can be. The labs are programmed across three strands: storytelling, the business of film, and career ladder. We hope you enjoy today's session.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Bennett. My pronouns are she, her. So I am the industry manager at Glasgow Film Festival. I didn't just get that job randomly. So I came up through a training called what was called the New Promoter Scheme back when I did it with Film Hub Scotland. It's now called the New Producer Scheme. And I got a placement with an organisation to work on programming, building networking events, and just kind of get a overview of how a festival works. And I was placed at an organization called the McRobert Arts Centre in Stirling. It was an incredible experience. The team there are amazing. And I worked with them during COVID, where we were trying to bring audiences in online. So I got to program an online festival with them, which was great. And then I went on to do some archive programming with them as well. Following on from that training scheme, I got a job as a program assistant at Glasgow Film Festival, where I worked in the programming team for the film program, helping pick films for the festival, and getting to watch a lot of exciting stuff and do a lot of cool Q&As. And then after that experience, my kind of interests were always in the industry side of it, working with filmmakers, and building those programs. So I was very lucky to be interviewed and offered the job for industry coordinator a couple of years ago. And then working with them and growing the industry program, and now the industry manager. So that's a very brief overview of my career. But somebody with a far more interesting career than me, and who we really want to hear from, is Lauren Lamarr. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren now to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her career.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sam. So I'm so delighted to be here today to talk about festivals in particular, because when I was actually thinking about what to say from my background, I started to realise how important festivals have been in my career journey. So I'm a producer at a company called Blazing Griffin in Glasgow. I'm here at the moment. And Blazing Griffin do video games, like the Agatha Christie video games that they're working on at the moment. We do post-production for things like Outlander and Shetland and lots of the kind of drama and really fantastic documentaries that come through Scotland. And the pictures team that I work in, we do films, TV, and documentaries. And we've just actually wrapped on Saturday on James McAvoy's directorial debut, California Scheming. So that's really, really exciting. And we're delighted with that. And how did I get started? Well, I always wanted to work in film and TV, but had absolutely no idea how to do it. And when I was at high school, I saw in a brochure somebody holding a camera, and it was for Paisley University, now UWS. So I thought, I'm going to apply and I'm going to go there. And I'm really sorry if anybody's ever been on a panel with me before. I probably tell this story every time, but I just think it's really important in this context. I nearly didn't go to university there or study film, because somebody said on the tour, networking is so important. If you can't network, you can't make it in this industry. And I was nearly like, well, that's me out. I'm not going to even bother trying. I hate that. That sounds horrendous. But there's some really good ways to do it that we're going to talk about today. So anyway, I did go, did my 4-year degree, and then came out and kind of realised I still didn't really know MD in the industry. And this is where I started going to things like GMAC and Cafe Flickr, which is a place where you can screen films. So it's like a mini festival every month that they have, and they've had them for years. And I started working on short films. I started acting in them, doing bits and pieces in them, trying anything, learning how to be a filmmaker basically. And eventually I also started getting jobs as a runner. So I was kind of doing indie short films whilst also getting a job as a runner in the more mainstream industry. So I worked up from a runner through production, and then worked on short films up to micro budget feature films, worked in advertising for a while as well, doing adverts for STV Creative, and then ended up in Blazing Griffin, where I've been for 9 years. So that's a whistle stop of where we are now.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. So as Duncan has talked about, and as Lauren has mentioned, we're going to get into the kind of key topic today, which is festivals. What happens at them? What one should you go to? What advice would we give you for going to them? How does networking work? all that fun stuff. But to start off, I think we'll start off with the key kind of topic is what actually happens at a film festival, Lauren? I think that it's a vague question, but like the nitty-gritty, what happens?
No, absolutely. It's such a good question. And it sounds like it could be obvious that you show films and whatnot, but there's so many different things that happen. And to get the best out of them, it's really good for us to talk about this. So I've written a little list. So obviously you've got things, and what I will say as well, and I'm sure we'll get more into this, there's different types of film festivals and there's different levels of film festivals. So the first thing I would say is don't feel pressure to have to go to places like the Cannes Film Festival or Berlin Film Festival if you're just starting out in your film festival career. There's so many local festivals that you can go to. And like I say, with different levels of panels and screenings, but the main things that happen, of course, are there's screenings, there's connecting with people and networking. There can be workshops and panels at specific ones. Some film festivals like GFF have industry events, which are fantastic. There's drinks receptions, there's award ceremonies sometimes. Sometimes they've got an opening and a closing gala, different types of parties. What else have we got? There's meetings with different types of people, so you can meet with your peers, you can meet with other filmmakers, different ones if you're looking to connect with directors, producers, actors, sales agents, distributors. So there's lots of different types of meetings you can have, but essentially you're watching films and you're building relationships.
And I'm just going to add that at GFF we also have a very wonderful event that I don't know if it happens at other film festivals. We have the film quiz, which is very competitive naturally at a film festival. So if you're at GFF, you have to go to that. And also film karaoke, which is just fun and not very serious at all. But yeah, so with film festivals, what was your first experience at a film festival? What was the first one you went to or the first one you remember going to?
So the first one, so again, coming back to GMAC, I didn't quite, so probably Cafe Flicker was the first time I went to a film screening where people kind of brought their films, you networked and things like that. So that was kind of more low-key indie filmmakers making their first or second short films. And like I say, they still, as far as I'm aware, they still do that at the moment. You can enter your film, people can critique it, people can talk about it, you can network and meet like-minded people. And then the bigger one that I went to, living in Scotland, was EIFF. So yeah, that was oh, Cafe Flicker's great. It's still going, woo! Good luck on Thursday. But yeah, so at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I actually went because when I said I left uni and started doing anything I could in films, I actually was an actor for a while. And one of the films that I was lucky enough to act in got selected into EIFF, so that was my first one. So it was a bit of a different experience. But yeah, it was going to see the film, and honestly, I'll be completely honest, I didn't make the most of it at all. I was so nervous, I was so intimidated. We went on, we did the red carpet thing and we were standing and it was really, really cool. And we saw it and then I just kind of like hid from everybody. So so I didn't really know, I didn't have anybody doing any of these sessions to say what we should be doing. So I didn't really know. I just, had a few drinks and then saw people I knew, hid with them and then went home.
Great. Well, a memorable experience though. So that's so with that in mind, when you're at EIFF, as much as you maybe you didn't know how to network or do stuff at festivals, what would you think from your first experience at EIFF? Obviously being a Scottish festival, really long history. What did you gain from that experience from attending just as your first festival, even if you didn't think it was the most successful?
Well, what I took from it was just how many filmmakers there are across the world and in Scotland, that Scotland is really just has been historically quite a big hub for film. Like you say, that was a massive festival. And that was what was really exciting about it. It was seeing people coming from all over the world to our country, engaging, taking it seriously. And just the passion for the different types of films that you can't see in cinemas. I had no idea there was that vast amount of genres and types of films and levels of films and budget levels of films. So it was just a real eye-opening, I was thinking I can do that. That's something I can do and I can have a film here and I've been in a film here. So it was really inspiring, apart from being a bit scared about it, but actually genuinely, meeting people there who, because they see you there, they start to take you seriously as a filmmaker. And then, I have built on some of those connections for years.
Yeah. So with your first experience in mind and then going across your career, what have been some of the more memorable moments from the bigger festivals you've been to or smaller festivals? And how have they impacted your career How has it made your career grow? Yeah.
So I'll give a kind of general answer on film festivals and how I actually learned the impact of film festivals from a director that I started working with, John McPhail. I don't know if any of you know John McPhail. He's a filmmaker from Scotland, from Glasgow actually, and we started working together. So just to take it back a touch, when I was getting really nervous about networking and not really realizing how to do it, when I went to Cafe Flickr, I started kind of just chatting to people and saying, I really liked your film. And then they would say, you know, I would say, do you need a hand on the next one? So I started getting involved in indie films that way by being involved in the work. And John was one of those people that I kind of got involved with, and I was saying, what are you doing next and whatnot? And we started working together, and I eventually started co-producing with him on another film, another producer called Lanny. And we did lots of shorts together, and I started producing lots of shorts. And John is actually one who kind of taught me the power of film festivals, because he was like, we've got this strategy, we're going to do a micro budget feature film. And I was like, are we? Okay, sure. And he was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do 3 shorts. And we'd gotten the budget together to do it, very tiny budgets, like I'm talking a few £100 each, short films. And then we're going to put them through the film festivals and see if we can get some recognition and go and meet people and build an audience, build kind of like a bit of a brand and an audience. And he had, and it worked, and he had such a good idea. So what we did is we made the first one and put them through. We didn't, and this is the other thing about film festivals, just if you're coming, not to jump around too much, but this is just what we did. You need to know your audience, and that's part of what film festivals help you with as well. We didn't try and get these, there were comedy shorts, very low budget, very heartwarming, you know, they were actually always audience favourites, but we knew they wouldn't get into places like Cannes or Berlin. So we kind of researched festivals that we thought did films like this, would appreciate films like this, so that we could get quite a lot of recognition. And when you start to be like, here's a film festival, when you start to tour the film festivals and they start to get a lot of laurels, people start to go, this must be quite good then. So we kind of did that with the 3 films, and then we as a team kind of had an audience that were really interested in working with us. So from there we kind of launched a micro budget feature film, which leads me to the point of your question. I had to give that background because one of the most significant times and most powerful times I had at a film festival was actually GFF, and that was when we'd done the 3 shorts and we'd made the micro budget feature film. Glasgow was our home festival, and Where Do We Go From Here, which was the feature film that we worked on, got selected for Glasgow Film Festival. And because John and the team had worked so hard to get this kind of audience who were really looking forward to this film and anticipating it because they'd enjoyed the short films, and also because it was our home crowd, and it actually screened at some other festivals around the world already. It was in Romania and it was in America. We kind of sold that screen out. It was the big massive screen, and what happened from there is we could invite Screen Scotland, we could invite other producers, we could invite loads of the industry people that we'd been getting to know for years to come along to our screening, and getting platformed there completely changed our careers. And John is now just completed his 4th feature film for Sky. And I'm obviously working with him and with Blazing Griffin, and it's fantastic. So anyway, that's a really long way to say that film festivals can significantly boost your career, and just making sure that you're getting into the right festivals and you're going to the right festivals for the audience if you're a filmmaker. And if you're looking to go and connect with people, try and research festivals to go and look at the ones that you would like to screen at, so you can get to know people, you can see what other films are getting in there. Don't know if that answers your question, Cindy.
No, absolutely. No, definitely. And I think it kind of leads on to, and actually maybe answers it, is why film festivals are really important to attend. I'm obviously a bit biased on that because I work at a festival, so I think everyone should go to festivals. But what would you say are kind of the top 3 reasons you should be attending a festival? What would be, the most important reasons to attend?
So definitely relationship building. Other ones that I've gone to, or the ones that I'm going to at the level of the career I'm at, are things like Cannes, where we're constantly going there. We're not actually seeing as many films. It's actually really difficult to get tickets to go and see a film in Cannes. Mostly you're there to have meetings that you pre-book before you go, so that we can try and get finance for the next film. So we'll build a slate of films and take them there. But anyway, the point is, for any film festival at any level, you're probably going there to build a relationship. But everybody will have their own reasons for going, and that's something to ask yourself, I think, before you do go. It's like, why do I think I'm going to this? And it can be as simple as, I'm going to see what it's like before I need to delve in. So that's why it's good to go to local ones that are near you, because you're like, I'm just going to go and observe and see what it's like, so that you're not being overwhelmed. And then the next time, like I did at Edinburgh, next time you go and you go, okay, I know what this is going to be like. I'm going to have a plan. But overall relationships. The second one is to see what else is out there, because I think it's really easy for filmmakers to be in their own little bubbles, and you're sitting there thinking with your films, I've got the best film ever. Well, why can't I get this going? And then you go and you see that so many people, and it can be intimidating as well, but it can also invigorate you. It's like so many people have got so many amazing creative ideas that are all, trying to get their films made too. It can be a bit of a reality check for yourself. And it can also be really inspiring, and hopefully it's a mixture of the two to kind of go, okay, need to up my game here, need to get these projects spruced up. And the third one, what's another one?
It's quite hard, to be fair. I know I work in festivals, but I think what you're saying, the two big ones are networking and
to enjoy films. To enjoy films.
Yeah, perfect. And I would say for anyone that's, isn't a filmmaker and maybe doesn't want to be a filmmaker like myself, I think as well going to festivals, just to, if you want to work in festivals, if you want to work in programming or kind of work in that industry, going to film festivals, particularly ones that are local to you, you can just kind of get a lay of the land and how they work, and meet people that work at them. You can network with people that why they're attending, and they're always good people to know, and filmmakers are always great people to network with. But networking with the kind of businessy side of the industry and the festival side of the industry and meeting those people, that's also festivals are great for that, because that is one thing about festivals across the board, is there will always be people at festivals that work at festivals, even not the team that's working like GFF, the people who attend GFF that work at other festivals around the world. So I think even if you're not a filmmaker, it is really important to go to different film festivals, see how they work, and put yourself out there, which can be very scary, but we'll go into that in a bit more detail soon. So what would you think, so what are the key factors for an emerging film professional that makes a film festival beneficial for them to go? And you've kind of briefly touched on that, and like the difference between a Cannes or Berlin and more local festival or smaller festival. So what would you think would be the key things that emerging talent need to look at when going to a festival before they decide to attend?
So obviously we know that everybody's budgets are probably quite tight, including to travel to festivals. So it really is research, and it is that question of what is it that you're going for? What would you like to get out of it? Is it the correct level of film festival for you? And then, making sure you know all those answers before you go. Also being really prepared, because and then also not just kind of, like I say, if you're at the stage of your career where you want to go along to something like Sam was saying, just observe, take it in, get the lay of the land. That's completely fine. Always have something up your sleeve in case conversations come up as well. But basically being really prepared, having your pitches practiced in case somebody asks, in case you get the opportunity to pitch to somebody. And also know who you would like to pitch to, because if you're a director and you want to go meet a producer, know that, maybe look at where the producers are going to be hanging around, maybe look at other films that have played that you want to go and see and say, oh, I love the film that you produced, or I love the film that you directed. Have a bit of a target list of people who you'd like to speak to. And yeah, if you're going to send materials afterwards, have them ready. Like, for example, if you're going to meet somebody and you don't have time always to show, if you're not going to have time to show them in the meeting, like you pull out your deck and get them to read a script, make sure that you've got those ready to send quite quickly afterwards. And actually, Sam and I were talking earlier when we were preparing for this to say, make sure that you've got a ways and means of, getting their contact details, so that you're not just having a really good conversation with people and then you never see them again, you can't remember their names. So whether it's through cards, from cards taken, connecting on LinkedIn, somewhere that's appropriate to connect, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's like Instagram, whatever it is, making sure that you're comfortable with it, they're comfortable with it, but that you are actually going to be able to connect with them. And you can ask them what their preference is. And something else that I usually do as well is, because once you've met loads of people at a festival and you've had a really good meeting, I always say to them, when do you want to receive this? Would you like me to wait a week and send it to you so that you're not bombarded, or, kind of have that conversation. And I think the thing to remember is as well, is like when you're having conversations with people, it's really okay to ask them what might seem like a basic question, and they'll really appreciate that, because I would always say, oh, thanks for asking, a week later, so that I'm back and I've, got on top, and then something will just come in at a nicely timed moment where I've caught myself back up. But basically understanding what you want out of it, prepping meetings beforehand if there's people who you really want to meet and target. yeah, that's the main things. And budget as well. Budget and make sure you can go. And if there are ones that you want to go to, check on Screen Scotland website and everything, and to make sure to see if it's one of the festivals that qualify for bursaries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, that would be my advice as well. Just look as well. And if you're not based in Scotland, look at your kind of local funder and see if there's any bursaries available. Sometimes they do delegations to festivals. So just look at that, because attending festivals can be really expensive. And you are taking on that financial risk going, so you want to make the most of it. But if there's ways, and there is lots of schemes out there where you can, where there's costs that can be covered. So definitely look into that, and that might be able to help your decision making about a festival. If you're torn between two festivals and there's a bursary for one of them, that should help make your decision a bit easier. Just take that financial burden off. And also going off Lauren's point about how you want to contact that person following up, always follow up with you, because you've spent all that time having that meeting, doing the work for it. So don't let it go to waste. Don't wait, 2-3 months later and you're like, oh, I didn't email that person, or I didn't message them. I mean, you can still message them, but they might not fully remember what the conversation was about. So strike while the iron's hot, sort of thing. And make sure you've answered their questions or sent them anything they've asked you said you were going to send, or just email them and thank them for their time, because it is really busy. So if anyone's spent the time to sit and talk with you at a festival, it's always good just to thank them. And they'll remember that, because not everyone sends a thank you. So it's always nice. I always like it when I get a thank you, even though I've probably just talked their ear off for an hour. So I should be thanking them. So
No,
with
and
that,
that's the kind of thing about prepping before, because there's actually quite a lot of prep. Well, now that I understand them more and what I want to get. Last year when we were going to Berlin Film Festival, I spent about the first kind of 4 weeks in January prepping for the Berlin Film Festival, getting names I was emailing, setting up the meetings, but also having all the materials ready so that as soon as I was done, I wasn't rushing back
yeah,
to be like, I need to pull this together. It's like knowing what I wanted to do for the year ahead,
yeah,
and making that targeting that festival to see who do I need to meet at this festival who might be able to help me do this, who might want to partner with me, and having the materials polished and ready so that you can make, if they say, oh, I'm actually looking for something like this, you can tweak them a little bit, but you're not starting from scratch. So just be prepped before the festival.
yeah, absolutely. And it probably saves yourself that additional workload during a festival, because a festival is tiring to attend.
Yes.
So being prepared means that you kind of protect your own sanity during that time, and you're not overloading yourself, because you can get burnt out really quickly at a festival. So if you've done the work beforehand, it should try and stop that overload as much as possible. But you just need to take care of yourself during festivals for sure, because they can be a lot,
They really
particularly bigger ones.
completely can. And
Yeah,
I would, if you're scheduling in meetings, you can have it back to back. Make sure you're that's essentially obvious, but it's not scheduling lunch breaks,
yeah,
scheduling time to travel between where you've said you're going to have the meetings. Because, especially for bigger festivals, but for small festivals as well, people might say, I'll meet you in such and such coffee shop. And then because you've never been to the place before, you're meeting somebody else somewhere further away, and then you don't realize that you've not got enough time to get there. So just make sure that you're mapping things out and you're giving yourself a bit of breathing space in between meetings if you are planning meetings or events.
yeah, and don't overload yourself too much, especially if it's your first or second festival. I think you want to take on as many meetings as possible. You want to meet as many people, go to as many events, many panels. But you've got to be mindful of having rest, having food, taking time for yourself, because it can be overwhelming. I've experienced it. We can talk about that later, but it can get overwhelming very, very quickly, and then you're not going to be your best self if you've been, you've not ate all day, you're tired, you've not really slept because you're anxious, So there's putting in those breaks and kind of those time gaps to maybe sit down where you find the place, you've got 15-20 minutes before the meeting, you can kind of just settle in, review your notes, or if you're having a particular meeting about a particular project, you can look over that, or if it's an organization you're meeting with, spend time going over your notes of what you've looked up on them, and it just gives you time to like calm in and settle into the meeting, so you're not rushing back and forth. So with that in mind, what kind of, for emerging filmmakers, what festivals would you recommend for them to attend if it was their first one?
So probably some of the ones that aren't hugely expensive, they don't have really expensive badges that you need to get. You don't have to travel too far. So make sure, so I know that we've got people from quite a spread out area. So I would say, first of all, look up whatever your local ones are. Ones that I've been to are Glasgow Short Film Festival, Aesthetica, and there's like the thing is as well, it's really important for you to know what genre of film. Well, like I say, you can go to anyone's. Anyone's are good, but when you're getting more serious and you want to get your films into festivals, look up ones that are genre. If you're making genre film festivals, make sure it's the correct genre you're going to. So, for example, which ones are horror ones? There's like one of our we've been executing quite a lot of shorts, and some of them have gotten into there's it's a horror film, so they've done lots of big horror festivals. So I appreciate that that's not that's super helpful, but Aesthetica, what else?
It
Womenette,
really
good
is.
one. Edinburgh as well do shorts.
Yeah.
So look at your local ones and make sure you're doing ones that suit the type of films that you want to do. Because like I say, when John and I were looking at the ones that we were looking for comedy ones. So Aberfeld, and we did things like Aberfeldy and lots of Scottish ones. So look for things that are going to appeal to your audience, and the type of people who are going to maybe want to fund you in the future or screen your films.
And also, if there's local film clubs in your area and you just want to trial going to an event by yourself, if you've never been to an event by yourself, going to a film club just to kind of, with it's not as much pressure. It's always fun to do that. And also, for the most part, you maybe go into a film club, you're watching a film, and there might be a conversation afterwards, and it's just a little less intense. So you can kind of ease yourself in a wee bit if you're a bit nervous about attending. I mean, I love going to the cinema by myself, but I also work in a cinema, so there's that. But I know it can be quite nerve-wracking for people, so you can always kind of get yourself used to that environment. So on that as well, so navigating a festival program, we've touched on it briefly, but what would your be advice about how you select what films to see and what events to go to? How do you kind of build your schedule so you're getting the most out of the festival experience?
Again, not to sound like a broken record, but again, sometimes I just look and think, I really like the look of that. I'd love to go and see that just purely for myself. But most of the time, if I'm being honest, I'm looking at filmmakers who I'd like to work with. So that it gives you a really nice in, so you can go and see their film, and then you can go and tell them how much you enjoyed their film. Hopefully, I'm sure they're all fabulous. But you can go and talk to them about their film, and or if you're looking for actors. So pretty much that's how I fill it up. A lot of the time I don't see as many films. Most of the time I am looking to speak to sales agents and distributors these days. But what I'll also say on that is, if you are looking to book meetings with people that aren't just, you're not just going to networking events or you've gone to a screening, you're going to speak after it. Probably people are thinking, what if I don't have load? And I'm saying, prep all your materials. If you don't have materials, that's also fine. You can ask people to meet, and just say, listen, I'm kind of this. I'm an upcoming producer. I'm an upcoming director. I'd love to hear what type of films you're looking for. Would you mind telling me what type of things you've been working on? So it doesn't always have to be about what you've got going on. You can use it as an exploration of what people want. And that's often what I'm looking for as well. The two things that I'm targeting, as well as going and trying to meet people and seeing their films and trying to build relationships to work with them, maybe as a co-production from different countries or as a or whatever that relationship might be. I'm also going on a fact-finding exercise with other producers and saying, do you work with other producers? Do you work with other companies? What do you look for in projects? So it's a lot. It's not just me trying to sell myself. I'm really looking to see what they're looking for as well, so that in the future I can build towards that, or find out if we've got the same sensibilities as people and going, oh, I really got on with them. I think we've got the same taste. So really actually going to films with people as well to kind of see what tastes people like, and match yourself up with people who you can work with long term.
Yeah, and I think that's actually quite a nice segue to talk about how festival networking and going to see films that potentially you're interested in, the director, the writer, the producer, or just knowing more about the team that put that together. The film industry is a lot about collaboration. So like going into these meetings and going into these festivals about looking for collaborators. The main goal of everyone is to get stuff made. That's why we all that's why we all do the job. We all do different jobs within the festival or in the industry. But main goal is we want to get films made and on the screen. And yes, I think approaching it like that and, talking to somebody and seeing what they're looking for and seeing how you can maybe help them is sometimes a nice way to approach it. And also a little bit less nerve-wracking if you think it's just a chat. I just want to know more about you. I want to get to know you. Because a lot of this industry is based off relationships. I think there's a famous phrase, it's who you know, not what you know. And I think sometimes in the film industry that rings true a lot of the time. It's, somebody can open a door for you just because they really liked you, you were nice, you chatted to them. You maybe only had a 15-minute meeting, but if you've made, you were just a good person to talk to, you were listening to them, you're interested in what they had to say, you've left a good impression there. And because sometimes at festivals, it can be really, really fast and people are, they're already focused on the next meeting. And if you're doing that, being like worried about your next meeting, you're not fully focused on the person you're speaking to, they'll notice that. So make sure you
Yeah.
give them time and thinking about this person as a potential collaborator, whether it's maybe they're not right now, they're not somebody you could collaborate with, or they're maybe a writer for a genre you're not particularly interested in. But in 5 years' time, that could all change. So just approach every meeting and every person you meet, whether that's at networking or a formal meeting you've set up or a panel you're at or a film screening, you just bump into somebody as a potential collaborator down the line. And it's just nice to meet new people. And whether or not they're going to be helpful to you, it's not always about somebody being helpful. It's maybe just somebody that knows somebody else or is just going to big up your work one day and is really interested in what you do. You're interested in what they do. So that would be my advice as well, is just collaboration is what this is all about at the end of the day.
Couldn't agree more. And just and on that, just in filmmaking in general, and that again, going back to me being a scared little person going, oh, I don't want to network. But then why it's essential. And when you look at the nice exciting ways that you can do it like this and you realize how important it is, it's like I think it can be scary when people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, because that feels like you can be left outside a little bit. But this is why we want to have these chats so that everybody can get to know the people that they do need to get to know. Every relationship starts somewhere. And also just a bit of context of what I've really realized is so important about why relationships are long-term relationships work, why you see people working with the same people again and again is, and I'm speaking as a film producer, I'm sure different departments will feel similarly, it's such an exciting job, but it can also be such a high pressure job, and there's so much trust that has to be involved. So if you're getting faceless CVs that are fantastic, but you've met somebody who's got an equally good CV and you've had a really good connection with them and you think that they feel like a trustworthy person, you never really know until you work with them. But there's always that chance that they're going to be the first one on your list that you're going to call, whether you've met them for a coffee in any role. I'm talking from runner to film producer, because you might, as a director or as a producer, you might end up spending years of your life with these people, and you really do need to have a good working relationship if you want it to be a nice process. So that's just a bit more context as to it's why when people know somebody, they'll think of the people they know first. And that's why it can be really tough. It's a catch-22, because then it is really, really tough for people to get in the door. And that's why understanding these opportunities and why they're important is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we go back to the kind of your local festival or film club, that's where, networking is really good as well, because you're getting to meet your kind of fellow filmmakers, fellow industry, and you're all in it together, as much as that might seem a bit cheesy, but you really are. And getting used to meeting each other, and you're all going to be coming up together, especially emerging talent. Our mentees at Glasgow Film Festival, emerging talent, I always tell them, the cohort of mentees when they go to festivals and they're together and networking, they all do there's producers, writers, directors, they work across different genres. Some of them are animation, some of them are live action, some of them are horror, some of them are comedy, some of them are TV, and they don't want to make film. But I always tell them that this group, right now you're all at the very beginning of your career, but in 10 years' time, all of you could be working together at something, or, you might know somebody who could help that person. Like, that is just as important a network as meeting the kind of decision makers and the big producers and the big production companies. Your fellow filmmakers and the people that are at the same level you are just as fundamental to your progress. So get talking to each other, you know, every time you go to a festival, you maybe want to meet a director that you really admire and that's made a lot of cool stuff. You want to be a producer or a sales agent, but also take the time to just meet some nice, fun people that are, at that career level as you, because you have that shared experience. And I think as well, when you've got friends that work outside the film industry, they maybe don't understand what it's like to work in the film industry. I mean, I've been working for quite a long time now, and my family don't know what I do. They don't think I have a stressful job. But anyone I know in the film industry will relate. And it's nice to have those kind of people in your corner. And it means when you've built that connection of your kind of peers, when you go to a festival in 6 months' time, you'll know people in that room that you didn't know 6 months ago. And they maybe aren't a decision maker, but they're going to be really important to you to make you feel comfortable, to cheer you on, and also could be a collaborator in years to come. You just don't know yet. That's the kind of fun of it, really, of all these cool people you could meet that you could end up winning an Oscar maybe in a couple, 10 years time. Got to think of it like that.
Thing where that's such an important point as well. It's not your peers are everything. They're your friends, they're your co-workers, they're your support, and they're the people who are going to pass your name around. Like you say, they're going to cheerlead for you. And again, another thing that we were discussing earlier is, I'm sure we'll get to kind of more the top tips of how you navigate a film festival, but they can be the people who come and stand with you when you feel awkward. They are the people who might want to turn up, and then you see them and you feel that relief that you're like, I know that person. So, and they'll hang about with you and give you the courage to go and speak to the one person that you want to go and speak to in the room as well as them. But yeah, peers are incredibly, incredibly important. And they're the people who you're going to, if you are an indie filmmaker and you're making shorts, like John and I, he was a camera trainee when I was a runner. Other people were, I was producing with them, they were junior, this and that. So your peers are the people you're going to come up and you're going to actually be in the workforce with. You're totally right about that.
Absolutely. So as we're on networking, we'll maybe go into that more, and then I'll go back to some of my more filmy questions. So I think the big one would be, what advice would you give to someone who has never been to a networking event before, a mixer? How would you go about it? And how would you make a good first impression?
So difficult.
I know it's a difficult question, it really is.
I would definitely find out, so I'm a person who likes to know what the rules are. So I would, what time is it starting? Is it casual? Is there going to be a panel so you don't walk in halfway through? So sometimes when you go to mixers, there's like a Q&A and then there's like mixing after it. So you want to be on time. If there's going to be a panel, you don't want to walk in halfway through. So find out, like as you were saying earlier, Sam, what's the lay of the land? What type of networking event is it? If you're not sure, maybe try and ask the organisers or try and ask somebody who's been before. Try and get a buddy to go with you. Is just my number one tip for everything. It's again really simple. Also, try and find out what the dress code is. Not that many. The film industry in general is fairly, I would say, fairly casual. So whenever I'm going to meet indie, just who's coming in for an interview, I'll always say, listen, you don't need to wear a suit, because they might feel strange turning up wearing a suit, coming into an office of people wearing trainers. So, and then you kind of feel self-conscious. So kind of try and find out what the dress code is, because every once in a blue moon, it's really, really fancy. So what you should wear, what time you should turn up. And the other thing as well is kind of go in and try and read the room, because sometimes, again, if you've got experience, if somebody can tell you, and I kind of wish that networking events would be a bit more explicit about what the kind of like ground rules are, but read the room and try and find these things out. For example, if it's a pitching session, like if it's kind of people who want to hear from you about what your projects are, sometimes there's networking events where it's like speed dating and you're like, I do this and I've got this and I've got that, what have you got? And it's back and forward really quickly. But sometimes people don't always want to chat about what they've got. They just want to be like, where are you from? What have you seen today? So just really be conscious of that. Like, people don't, the best way to get people to work with you isn't always to slam a project down their throat immediately. So yeah, read the room, know what to wear, know what time to turn up, know yourself. If you're going to need a quiet 5 minutes, like know where the nearest like bathroom is so you can go and hide there for 5 minutes if you need a quiet moment. This is like, don't get too drunk if you're going to feel embarrassed the next day. Because it's really tough. Like there's lots of film festivals, there's lots of drinking parties, and there's often free alcohol. And I've kind of got like a 2-drink rule this is only for myself, because I know a lot of people who don't and who make very good connections off the back of not, but just kind of know what you're going to be comfortable with yourself. I get the fear the next day if I've had too many and I'm like, what did I say? So
Yeah,
whatever.
when you're nervous, I think
Yes, when you're
especially there's wine and there's usually alcohol at these events, and don't feel like you need to have a drink. I usually carry car keys with me so nobody asks why I'm not drinking.
good plan.
Yeah, it works. But also because you can be quite nervous, and sometimes it's nice to have something in your hand. I'm somebody that talks with their hands, so I can't have anything in my hand. Otherwise, it just ruins my flow, as we've noticed. Got this pencil, which I need to put down at some point. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good advice. And also if there is a panel before it, sometimes it can be really scary to go, after networking, and then all of a sudden everyone gets up and starts moving around and you don't know anyone. So if you sit down, introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you, maybe go a little bit earlier, and you can start a conversation with them. And maybe somebody else sits down and you can kind of start to make friends with your row. And it's a little less daunting because you're just sitting casually chatting. This isn't the networking part. This is just being polite. And then it means you've got a couple faces that you can maybe speak with or stand up with when the networking starts. And it's just a little less scary and feeling you're a little bit alone. Also, if you're there by yourself and you walk into just a networking thing, I always find somebody else standing by themselves and go speak to them because they're probably feeling the exact same way. They're too terrified. So if they're by themselves and you're by themselves, you just go speak to them. And that's what I did for most of my first networkings, was just speak to the person who was also a loner. And it was great. I'm still friends with a lot of them. So we do not work in the same field at all, but still friends. So that's always good. And it kind of takes the pressure off a wee bit. And I think just
Excellent.
a reminder that most people in networking, Lauren, we talked about this, nobody really knows exactly how to network. Nobody loves networking. So as long as you remember that, even the people that have been doing it for years, they most of the time these people just talk to the people they know because they're also really nervous.
Yes.
So
And
keeping
also that's a really good point. They just know more people, so it looks like
yeah,
they're really good at it, but they just know a lot more people in the room. It's not that big of an industry once you get to know. And so when you're like, oh, look at that person, they're talking to everyone. It's because they've been to 10 festivals and you've been to one festival. So
yeah,
that will come in time if you keep on going to them. And another just exactly a really good point that you made about, so if there was something before it and you sit down and you speak to somebody, my preference, if I can and if it's available, is to go to networking events that are off the back of a panel or are off the back of a film, because everybody's got that common experience that they can go, oh, did you enjoy the film? Did you enjoy, that was a really good point you made on the panel. So you're not starting from scratch. Everybody's just had the same experience so that you can pick up talking points on that as well. So that's why they're really enjoyable to me, because you've just had that. There's loads of things to talk about.
absolutely. And I think it just from a GFF standpoint, if you're ever at Industry Focus at Glasgow and you're feeling really overwhelmed, feel free to you can leave the room. No one's judging you for leaving. But also don't beat yourself up too much if you didn't feel like you could talk to anybody, or just the fact that you showed up. Like if that's all you were able to do is go to the panel or go to the networking, maybe stand. I always have my phone when I'm really uncomfortable. I look at my phone and pretend I'm doing emails. That's another trick if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. But just trying to go there and maybe try the next time. Because it does take time to get used to these situations, especially when you're first coming up. My first ever networking, I don't think I spoke to a single person. And then just walked around the room and looked busy. And then left. I remember being so annoyed at myself, but also I then reminded myself, it was like the Sammy from, a year ago would never have walked into that room. So the fact you can walk in, so it's just taking the wins where they are. But yeah, if you're ever at BFF and you're feeling overwhelmed, you can just find me because I will talk to anyone. And you will just make a big group. Be great. And then I can introduce you to people. But I don't know if they do that at other festivals, but that's just because, and Liv and Duncan can contest, I love to talk. So find a yapper. That's another advice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So whenever you find, like, I love when people are just like friendly, like chatty people, it's the best, because then it puts you at ease, and also if you've got nothing to say, then they'll keep the conversation going. This is like everybody's going to catch me out for this now when I do this, because it's not actually a trick, that's a reflection on anyone else. But just what you said about looking busy or taking a phone call, sometimes I will deliberately go have something booked reasonably close. I'm going to this screening next, and it's so that, because the thing is, have you ever been in a conversation where you think, I've said everything I've got to say, they've said everything they've got to say, now we don't know how to move on from this, and we want to speak to other people, and I don't want to impose. So if I've already started the conversation with, I really enjoyed that, I'm actually nipping to such and such film at 1:30, I'm just staying for 10 minutes, so that you've got that natural out, and it doesn't ever seem like you're like dismissing them. So having somewhere to go so that you're not overstaying your welcome is also quite good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think having that out is always quite important. And then also if it is cancelable and you're talking to lots of people you don't want to go, it's easily moved. But also if you are just like, oh, I need to leave now, and you've got a great film probably to go see, which is
Exactly.
great. Um, so speaking of films, although we can go back to a bit of networking, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions in the Q&A. But obviously going to film festivals, there is great films there. So what would you say, and this is a complete tangent, we're switching now, but what would you say is the importance of learning to watch films critically and going to film festivals to see films and see what's coming out, what's happening in the market,
Oh, incredibly important. especially like I keep on harping on about, go and see the film festivals that are the most relevant to you. You don't always have to, but if you I've been to TIFF before, and that I love that. I went and I was doing panels and all these things. I went via SIF, Scottish Youth Film Foundation, when they were a thing. Um, Anyway, that's a tangent. But basically, yeah, it's just going and seeing what types of budget levels that are getting screened there, what's your competition, what types of films people want. And just like you say, critically understanding, so that when you're getting feedback from the market and you're sitting thinking, why can't I get this film away? And then you go and see other films and see what is getting made and what's getting through, you can adjust your own projects essentially to be what people are actually looking for.
Yeah.
And that sounds again really obvious, but it's not. And until you're going and you're, if you're hitting your head off a brick wall and you just can't get MD to finance you, you can't get MD to give you any funding, or you can't get MD to join as a sales agent or an actor, or any of these key elements that you need essentially to get your film made. And you're thinking, why can't I get there? Then go and watch other films and see what they're doing that you're not, essentially.
And I would also say for any film programmers as well, going to festivals and seeing the films that are getting picked. There's some festivals will show bigger titles that come from the big studios, but also seeing some of the independent films getting in. It's good to just, for your own kind of knowledge, how are these films getting picked? What kind of films are getting picked? And just building, also watching more and more films is just going to help you as a film programmer. And seeing what audiences there are for these films, because when you're a film programmer, you're not programming for yourself, you're programming for an audience for that festival. So going to see a kind of whole host of films, if there's strands, go look at each strand and seeing why is that film in that strand, and trying to think critically about why they've programmed it. Even thinking about going to see a film, if it's an afternoon slot, why is it in this afternoon slot? Why have they picked it for this day? And you can kind of think of it like that and see it from an audience perspective and the kind of programmer perspective of why is this film being picked? Why is it at this point? Which you're not going to get from, I mean, I love industry panels, obviously, but if you're as a film programmer, you kind of need to be seeing what films are getting picked, when they're getting picked, and stuff like that. So that's always good to build your knowledge. And it's really fun as an old programmer. Great fun going to festivals and watching loads of films. Wish that was still my job. So
Also, I just need to correct myself. I just said SIF, Scottish Film, because I'm on their panel and I'm dyslexic, so that's my disclaimer. I said the wrong acronym, so just say they're still going and they're still amazing. That's not who sent me to TIFF. I was like, they're done. Sorry, let's move on from that.
And then, so this is kind of maybe going back to networking, but it's just the watching films was my big question, and also one that I think will maybe come up in the Q&A. And we've kind of touched on it without saying it, but what is your biggest advice for people attending festivals to get over imposter syndrome? It plagues us all, it really does. But what would be your one tip or kind of advice to give somebody?
Fake it till you make it. Well, first of all, what I would like to say to any filmmaker is everybody's voice is important. Everybody is allowed to make a film. Everybody's an audience member. You are all consumers of films. You're all valuable audience members. You are all critics. You all know what you like and you don't like about films. And, we need people to go along as audiences. We need people to be emerging filmmakers. We need different voices. And there's an industry, and whether you're a director, a producer, a runner, anything like that, you're so welcome there. So I just want, as somebody who's been in the industry for many years now, everybody's welcome. You're valued. Please go. Do not feel imposter syndrome. Flipping that as somebody who feels imposter syndrome, you do just have to go and just, again, remind yourself what you're going for, surround yourself, have your plan and stick to it. And just know that when you feel uncomfortable, it will get easier every single time. Every time you do anything new, whether it's going to school, whether it's going to university, college, you feel nervous, you feel like you're out of place, and just know that it's going to get easier with time. And to stick to your guns, and realize as well that we're all, and the people you're speaking to are humans. They're only people. Everybody did something once for the first time. So just ask your questions. There's no silly questions if you're open about the level that you're at. The one thing I would say is, when I say fake it till you make it, don't lie. Don't come in and say, I've got £5 million to this week. Just fake the confidence, but don't fake your experience. Be honest, be open. And people can be so generous, and usually are so generous when you're saying, listen, this is my first festival. I'd love to hear your perspective. I'd love to hear what type of things you want to do, and you want to make. So just, be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you're saying, everyone's been in that position at some point. Even the people that are now really high up, there was a point where they didn't know anybody and had to walk in a room. And I think that imposter syndrome is, for me anyway, was going into a room and being like, nobody will find me interesting. Why would anyone want to speak to me? I can't offer them anything. I'm a newbie. I'm just lucky to be in the room. They're not going to waste their time wanting to speak to me. But that is, for the most part, never true. Like if you're talking to somebody and you're just having a nice conversation, they're just happy to be talking to you too. And they also, no matter how experienced, they were probably really nervous. You're talking to them, and they're like, oh my God, somebody's talking to me. Thank God. Like, I don't need to look around a room to find somebody to talk to. And this could be somebody that's really high up, but they're just thrilled that somebody spoke to them. I think if it's not always going to be the case. I've had experiences where networking hasn't been brilliant and maybe somebody has been a bit rude, but that is always a reflection on them and not a reflection on you. For the most part, this industry is really welcoming of emerging talent and people that want to work in this industry. And people are just excited to be at the festival. It's a really good experience. It's really, it's fun. It's really fun. You're seeing great films. You're meeting great people. The panels are really cool. And that's just GFF. But there's so all festivals like that. Everyone is, there to meet new people and to collaborate and to make this industry a success. That's what everyone's working towards. So just remind yourself of that. And even if you, like Lauren was saying, maybe fake the confidence a wee bit if possible. But also sometimes just networking isn't for you. And that is completely fine. There is other ways to make connections in this industry. There's sometimes when you go to festivals, there's something called a delegate list, where it's a list of everyone that's attending, and you might be able to contact them via that messaging service, or they might have their email listed. Reach out to them that way. Ask to meet for a coffee. You don't have to go to these rooms where there's 100 people in them, and you have to walk up to somebody. There's other ways to network, and it's just finding what you're comfortable with. So don't beat yourself up if you go to loads, maybe go to 3 or 4 networking events and it's just not for you. That's absolutely fine. There's other ways to make connections. Using LinkedIn is a great tool to connect with people. And then emailing people at a festival. If you know they're going to be there, you can organize a coffee to see them in an environment that maybe be more comfortable for you. Or if you can't get there in person, maybe ask if they can do a Zoom call after the festival when it's quieter. And you'll probably get more of their time at that point. They're not as exhausted. They've got a little bit more time to give. And just say, networking isn't really for you, so you always try and do something a bit different. If you're just honest, you'll be surprised the amount of people are like, yeah, I hate networking. Which Lauren and I were saying, I do a lot of networking, but it's not my favorite thing. And there's definitely other ways to connect with people. So don't pressure yourself if it really makes you uncomfortable and it's just not something you want to do, and it isn't beneficial for you because of the kind of reaction you have to it. Just don't do it. There's other ways to connect with people. So it's keeping that in mind as well.
And I would say I do 80% of my networking the way you just described, Sam, which is looking at the delegate list and meeting them one-to-one if they would like to meet me. And then the other 20% is just kind of, and also through introductions as well is really helpful.
Yeah. And if you're at a film and you're sitting next to people and like Lauren said, you've got that common kind of ground immediately afterwards, you can just strike up a conversation with them. And sometimes that's daunting, but you don't have to do that either. Don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. There's lots of ways to connect with people in this industry. So just do what feels comfortable and right for you. And the industry is slowly, it used to be just people, the industry is slowly changing. And I think because we all went online, 5 years ago now almost, which feels bizarre. The world has changed a bit. There is more online options. There is more connecting over email. And the networking isn't just being in a room. There's lots of ways to connect with people during a festival. So yeah, I would say that's really important as well. But imposter syndrome, even I've been working quite a long time now in the industry and I still have imposter syndrome. So it's just keeping it on your shoulder and telling them to be quiet a wee bit is sometimes the tip as well.
Exactly, because if it's not you, then who? Like, why shouldn't you be allowed to do it? Why shouldn't you be allowed to do it? And also sometimes for imposter syndrome, I always feel much more comfortable if I've got even just for my own self, I've got a solid reason to be there. And we spoke about this a bit earlier as well. If there's a local festival that you might want to volunteer at, you're in that room because you maybe have a specific task to do. Like you're welcoming people in and you meet them all that way, and you can chat to them a bit later or things like that. So
Absolutely. So we are now ready to go to the Q&A portion, which I think Duncan is going to help with. If I'm right in thinking that. Maybe. Thank you, Lauren, by the way. Oh. I can see there's lots of Q&A questions in the tab here, which is exciting. Just waiting for Duncan. I think he's just getting, there's a lot of questions there, so I think he's just getting through them. I'm just looking through the questions now. That looks like really good ones. Also keep your questions coming in, everyone, because we do have quite a big chunk here for Q&A, and there is a lot of questions here, but if you want to ask a question, feel free to do so.
Hello. Hi. I have the questions. So, we have an amazing range of questions, and I fear that we're not going to be able to get through all of them right now. But to kick them off, I wondered if we could say, what can one do with a short film that was made a few years ago, never been screened anywhere? Can it be still accepted to a film festival? Do you feel that they have an expiration date?
I mean, Sam, you can talk from a festival's point of view. I definitely think you can absolutely screen it, especially if you've not been screened before. Absolutely. And there's lots of different ways. There's, what is it? Is it Film Freeway? That's a really good resource to upload your film to. And that's like, you know, you put up your film, you put up your blurb, and then you can search for the different types of festivals that you want, and it tells you what are coming up. It tells you what's free to enter. If you've got a small budget that you want to spend, pick and choose ones that you think your film's got a chance of getting in. Don't put your money to Cannes Film Festival or anything like that. But yeah, absolutely, get it in there.
And then just on that, when you're looking at the Film Freeway is a great resource, but just look at a lot of the festivals that have like the T's and C's. And so some of them will have, it has to have been completed by this date, or it can only be a year old. There's not a lot of them, but there is some, more so in the feature world than in the short world. But just look at that, so you're not putting, you've not maybe spent money on in a submission to a festival and then it says something there. But also, I worked with a filmmaker 2 years ago who got the local cinema to screen their short film, and they did a family and friends screening, which was really fun. So yeah, that would also be my advice, is find your local cinema and see if you can get some friends together that have also made short films. If you're not having any success with the festivals, because that's really fun and you get to see your film on the big screen, and that kind of shows initiative as well, and you can invite filmmakers and maybe some other decision makers that you have connections with along to it if they live in your area. Yeah, that would be another bit of advice I would say.
And if you're anywhere near Glasgow, then as we established at the start of this chat, thanks to that person, Cafe Flicker is still a thing, and that's like a great mini, like essentially film festival every month. So submit to that as well.
Okay, and then maybe taking almost a step further back from that, what about if you don't have a short film at all? Is it worth presenting yourself at a festival in that situation? And I wonder, actually, I'm going to try and sort of combine a couple of questions here. So there's one question is, if you don't have a short film at all, is it still valid going? How do you present yourself? And the second one is, I've got a screenplay, I've got a director behind it, but I just can't find that producer who's interested in it. How do I sort of pitch myself in that situation?
Great. So to answer the first one, if you don't have a film yet, I think it's always worth going, because as Sam and I were talking about earlier, you get to kind of see, what types of films are out there, what level of film making for production values and budgets, etc., the different categories. So if you're sitting there thinking, I would like to make a film and I've not made one yet, this might help you have a really good point of reference. It also might help you find some people that you can work with and collaborate with. I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for, but again, you can be going along to films that you like the sound of. You might think, I want to make films like that. I might want to make horror films or rom-coms or, comedies, and go and see some, meet the filmmaker and say, I love that. How did you get your film made? I would love to make a film. Would you mind telling me how you did it? Where did you get your funding from? Would you like a co-producer if it's a producer you want to be, or a writer? Would ask them if they want a hand on their next one, if indeed you're willing to give them a hand and collaborate with them. So absolutely. And then you're starting to meet people, and then if you get to know the people who run the festival, you can say, listen, I'm a new filmmaker, I'd love to submit to you next year when I have got my film, and then they might remember you. So there's an abundance of reasons to do that. Sam, I see you've probably got loads of ideas on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've not made a short film yet, still definitely go, like your Lauren was saying, meeting collaborators and then offering to help. There could be a couple short filmmakers you meet that are going into production in a couple of weeks. And even if you can't help, even just asking them to come along, if they're, if that's a possibility, if somebody, if you can drive, that's always helpful. You can offer to drive them between places. But just to be there and kind of see how it works, and start getting exposed a bit more to the kind of filmmaking process. Yeah, so recommend you still go. Absolutely. And you'll meet a lot of great people and also learn a lot if you're going to like an industry program, a shorts festival in particular. There'll be people that have funding for short films for like really early career who've never made anything. So you actually might find money to make your short film, or you might get a pop of inspiration. No, they're so, yeah, definitely don't. Just because you've not made a film doesn't mean you shouldn't go. I've never made a film and I go to loads. So
And that's exactly what when I went to Cafe Flickr for the first time when I was trying to make films, I did exactly that when I didn't know how to, and I was like, do you want me to work in your film? And I met people that way. So that's how, and I didn't start producing films by being a producer. I started by being a runner, by just helping and then, working my way up to it. So yeah, absolutely.
And then to go for the looking for a producer question, um, I mean, Lauren will definitely know this as well, but if you're struggling to find a producer that's a right fit, um, it's maybe not the bit, just keep watching short films that you've seen coming out, short films that people you know of, and see if there's any that kind of match what you have visioned for this film, and then reach out to the producer. It's probably going to be a lot of, I say, cold calling or cold emailing. Um, but that's another thing. And then going to festivals, short film
Yeah.
festivals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So basically, so that was you've got a screenplay and you've got a director, but you don't have a producer. That was right, wasn't it? So absolutely that. It's again at festivals, going to the networking events. If there's any panels specifically for producers, think about the panels that producers would be at. Like if it's a finance one, go to that because there's going to be producers there. Again, think about the type of screenplay that it is, make sure it's the right genre. Think about the producers who, if you've got a screenplay and you want to make a micro budget feature film for £100,000 or £50,000 or £3,000, whatever you're going to make it for, make sure you're again approaching a producer who's of that level. Don't maybe don't and don't feel also don't feel scared to reach out to people who might give you a hand in some advice. If they've made like £100 million feature film or a £10 million feature film, it's unlikely that they're going to have the capacity to produce a micro budget feature film, but they might exec produce it for you. They might give you some advice. They might have somebody junior in their office who might be looking to do their first feature film and can help match. So don't be scared to reach out to those people, but do look at people who are of a similar level. Again, not to keep bringing it back to Scotland, but there's really good schemes here. There's the producer accelerator scheme, who are there people specifically training to be a producer who might not have projects. So, again, look at any producer training, look at universities that do specific training for producers. And, you could email the RCS or whoever has got these specialist courses and say, right, your director here looking for a producer, would you mind passing on the project or a pitch deck? So again, have your strapline, have your materials ready so that when you do come across somebody or you want to send them around universities, colleges, training courses, you can do that too.
Yeah, and the short film funds you'll see as well, they'll have listed the awards they've gave. So whatever that year of the short films they've made, especially the ones that are lower budget, like your £2,000 or £5,000, etc. A lot of those producers will be going out and they've kind of built their time, they know a little bit more. So they're always good people to reach out to, and they probably, like Lauren said, have a bit more of capacity to take on a project.
Okay, so on that topic of don't be scared, which is great advice. We have a question though that says, I suffer from bad anxiety. What do I do in these situations? Do you have any suggested conversation starters?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, anxiety is something I unfortunately have the joy of having as well. And especially when you're going to your first networking or event, industry or kind of film screening, it can be really, really overwhelming. And you get in your head a lot. So I think one, definitely, like, what this is obvious, but when you ask the person's name and you go to introduce yourself, I get so in my head about remembering to say my own name that I do not listen to what that person's name is. It happens to this day, still happens. So remember to like breathe and focus on that. But also a great question is, why at the festival? What are you up to? What have you done today? It's a common ground. You might have gone to the same panel. You might have gone to the same film. If they're there because they're looking for finance, great. You could just start asking about their film. People love to talk about their own projects. So if you're really worried about trying to talk about yourself, get that person talking about them, because more often than not, they'd love to do that. They'd love to talk about the project. They'd love to talk about their work. So ask them that. If they're there because they were invited, that's ask them, what panel they were on, or why, what have they done to be invited. That's really cool. What's their job? How did they get to this point? Just get them talking about themselves, and then the more questions, and just remember to listen, because when you get anxious and you're so focused on looking interested and making sure you're listening to what they're saying, you actually don't listen. So just remember to breathe and yeah, ask them loads of questions about themselves. Usually would be my tip.
Couldn't agree more. I'm absolutely an anxious person, so just yeah, everything that Sam said, and again that comes back to if you can get somebody else to come with you that can ease that anxiety as well, because it always just can make if you run out of things to say, it can make it, you can have that chat between the three of you. Or the four of you, or whoever. So yeah, bring a pal if you can. If you can't, then as Sam says, just walking up and being like, "So what have you been doing today?" Or what are you going to next? Have you seen any good films? Tell me about the films you've seen, even if it's not about their projects.
And also being a bit vulnerable as well. Like I always tell people I'm really nervous because they're going to know anyway, because my neck's gone blotchy, my hands are sweaty. So just sometimes that vulnerability, people naturally relax around you as well. So don't be afraid to say something, oh, I'm really nervous, so I'm just going to speak to you because you look nice. People would take that I take that as a compliment, because I'd look really anxious. So if anyone come up to me, I'm like, I don't look like a safe pair of hands. So yeah, just being a bit more vulnerable. Don't be scared to tell somebody you're nervous.
Absolutely. I'm nervous tonight.
Don't be nervous, Lauren. It's going brilliantly.
Thank you. So here we go.
Let me tell you about my film. So look, we've got so many good questions. If you'll forgive me, I'm going to try and again combine sort of three into one to try and get through a few of them, because they do overlap. There's a really nice one. This one, it says that I'm 17 and I find that often filmmaker network events, they involve alcohol, they're going out. Am I too young to attend? And then linked to that, there's another question saying, are there any good festivals you recommend for teenagers? And then possibly you can throw in as well another one asking about good festival for college students. So just before you answer that, I should plug, ourselves at Glasgow Film, of course, that we are offering, as mentioned at the top of this, the Glasgow Film Festival. There's going to be our industry day, free day of industry events funded by BFI Film Academy. And those are specifically for young people aged 16 to 25. No alcohol involved. But yeah, I don't know if you jotted those down. And I should say that we've been mentioning Scotland a lot. This specific question did say, are there anyone you can think of around the London area? So.
God, because I was gonna redeem myself and be like Scottish Youth Film Festival after getting it.
No, throw that in as well, I think.
Yeah, because they're specifically for youth. And they're fantastic and do lots of things for younger people. On the drinking thing, I guess you'd need to check case by case, because sometimes if it's in a bar, they will have the usual licensing laws. So just check that before you go. But you've not got long to wait now. You're close. It probably feels like a long time. London. I don't know if one of my good producer friends is from London. She's a Londoner, so I can definitely get some recommendations from that area and feed them back later. I don't know if there's a mailing list. Happy to do that.
I would say as well, if you look at like the London Short Film Festival, I think they might have some events that are geared towards younger filmmakers, but it's just being diligent. A lot of them, like Lauren had said, if there's alcohol at the event, it'll naturally be an 18+ event, but that doesn't mean there isn't events for people under 18 at that festival. It's just you maybe have to do a bit more digging to find them. London Animation Festival might have some events that are for people that under 18 can attend from the industry side of it. But it's just having a wee Google and then looking at festivals. Obviously, yeah, the BFI have just posted about the BFI Future Film Festival, which is an obvious one, and really great. So you should definitely go to that. But yeah, it is a bit naturally it can be a bit more difficult if you're under 18, just because, like Lauren and I said, some of these events are in bars or there's alcohol at them, so they have the licensing laws. But just do a bit of digging. At all festivals, there usually is something around for people under 18, like Duncan was saying at GFF. We have a full day of activity, and there's other things that pop up throughout the festival. So it's just doing a wee bit of research and looking into it. And then if there's a festival you really want to go to, but a lot of the stuff is 18+, Look at and see if any of the film screenings have a Q&A afterwards, and see if you can try and connect with people there and just kind of make your own networking. Sometimes it's fun. So and then college students, again, same advice. If you are over 18, things open up a little bit more. But I think if you're just starting out, Lauren had talked about like Glasgow Short Film Festival, Aesthetica, London Short Film Festival, BFI Future Film Festival. It's quite a small festival. It's up here in Scotland called the Central Scotland Documentary Festival. So if you're into documentaries, the Women X Festival is really cool. There is loads, but I think looking in your local area to test the water a wee bit of how you attend festivals and film clubs, and also colleges and universities sometimes run their own kind of what you call them, film clubs as well. So they're always really great. And we actually sometimes film fest at universities come up to Glasgow, across the UK. So yeah, as much as it's a boring answer, it's sometimes just doing a bit of digging at the festival and seeing what's there.
Great. And I think we've got time, probably sadly, just for one more. So let's finish with a question about staying in touch. And that is, when you make contacts with people, you've introduced yourself, what's appropriate in terms of a follow-up? Is it LinkedIn, IMDb? What's too much? What's not enough?
I always think, especially because, I know there's some younger folks here, make sure that, I think you guys said this at the start, make sure that you're safe. Don't give out too much personal information. So things like LinkedIn are safe. Email addresses, if you want to make a specific email address as well, just for film contacts, you can do that too, without any of anything personal in the handle, the like Lauren Lamarr at thisismyaddress.com. So nothing like that. So just anything that you feel comfortable with, ask them what they feel comfortable with too, what's there, and also make sure that if you are going to set up specific addresses, that's something that you're going to check, otherwise it's kind of pointless. But the ones that I see more often it's usually we email each other. And so we have business cards. I still have business cards. A lot of people have got the virtual business cards now that you scan or things like that. But yeah, I email people a lot. Sometimes people follow each other on Instagram, but again, I don't know if I can recommend that. But LinkedIn. And often just like sometimes we do pass on phone numbers if you get to know them a bit better. I would never just immediately start WhatsApping people if I've just met them at a festival, unless we've become really friendly or we're in a WhatsApp group. Oftentimes on that, one of the things that we touched upon earlier was about your peers. What a lot of people do have when they're a bit maybe like over 18 and they're going to a lot of festivals abroad. They have WhatsApp groups about, is anybody else going to the festival? Does anybody want to share an apartment? Does anybody want to chum up while we're there so that we can go to an event together and you're not walking around by yourself at night and things like that as well. So that's WhatsApp groups are a good way to keep in touch if everybody feels comfortable with that.
I would say, yeah, like, a lot of the people, especially people that have been in the industry a bit longer, they will have business cards, and you can sometimes, I still don't have a business card, but your notes app on your phone, if you have it, or just sending an email to yourself of that person's email, always get them to type their email in. When I first started out, the amount of times I would type an email wrong, and then you just spoke to somebody for an hour and you've lost it. You've not got their contact. And then, yeah, always follow up. I'd say like a week after the festival's ended, people's inboxes have calmed down a bit. And it's just, yeah, if it was like Lauren had said, if you're sending them something a week later, that's fine. But if it's just, you're not sending anything, but you're just saying thanks and hoping, to keep in touch, or if you're, just keeping that line of communication open, saying how great it was to speak to them. And then, maybe you're going to a festival and you're going to LFF, or you're going to Flare, or you're going to Future Film Festival, or you're going to GFF, and just reach out to them. Maybe you've not you've spoke after, you maybe like a couple of things on LinkedIn, and then just reach out to them maybe a couple of weeks before the festival and be like, hey, I'm going to be here. Hope you're there. If so, it'd be great to catch up. And even if they're not, it's another way of keeping, you've thought of them, you're keeping that line of communication open, and eventually you'll be in the same place at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's just a really important point, is to, festivals, the kind of regular festival circuit that you might want to go to is a really good way to connect. It's like, oh, I haven't seen you since last time. Would you like to meet up while we're there? It's a really nice. And the other thing to just say as well is give people a prompt when you are emailing them. Because if you just say, hi, it's Lauren, nice to meet you, they're going to go, I can't remember which Lauren that was, I met 5. So if you say, hi, I would meet you, if you put in the subject line, if you're emailing them, such and such panel or such and such drinks, say, it was so nice to meet you at such and such drinks. I was the one with the blue hat on and it was so lovely to chat to you about this. Anyway, I'll get in touch when I'm blah, 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 blah. So make sure you're giving them prompts so that they can remember who you are. That's so helpful.
Thanks so much for watching this BFI Film Academy Labs session on film festivals, why you should go, and how to get the most out of them. We run monthly live digital labs, and we'd love to have you at our next event, which is on heritage films, what they are, and how they can influence your film journey. To find out more about the event, visit our lab's webpage, which you can find in the video's YouTube description, and follow Film Academy on our social channels. Thanks, and see you next time.